My name is Chisom Wogo, and I work with AfriInvest Trustees Limited. And with me today, I have the MD of AfriInvest Trustees, Rita Abengowe, on the call. I also have the head of our business development, Mr. Oyewale Odekinho. I have a trust advisor, Damilare Adogo, and my co-host today, Ebonluwa Tubobo. And what we want to try and achieve today is a lot of things. If you have been an avid, join one or two of our webinars, we talk a lot about trust, but today we want to go a step further to explain why should you trust the trust, really. As trustees and as someone who works in a trust company, we talk about trust a lot, but we don't really say why you should trust it. So apart from understanding what it is, why should you trust such a structure? And that's what we want to achieve today. In the content, we're going to look at introducing estate planning. You can't talk about trust without first understanding what estate planning is. We're also going to talk about the tools of estate planning. And in understanding the tools, we have to compare the various tools of estate planning, and of which we would also discuss very interactively, I must say, the real gem of estate planning. And then we'll go forward to our services and all other things. So let's get right into it. Introducing estate planning. Most people have the notion that estate is different real estate or is large spans of buildings where individuals live. But a lot of people don't know that your estate could be your personal assets, from landed properties to intellectual properties to even these days digital assets. They all form part of your assets. And then when you think about what you have as an individual, no matter what stage you are now, in terms of growth, in terms of accumulation of assets, you start to think about planning this asset. What is your plan for it? Do you want to grow it? Do you want to keep it safe? Do you want to pass it on to the next generation, your loved ones? Do you even just want to see what you have? A lot of people don't even know the certain kinds of assets that they have. So it's really the process of arranging and preparing during your lifetime and your active years for the management and disposal of those assets. So it involves a lot of things, like I mentioned. Some people don't know that a certain class of assets could fall under an asset that an individual would hold. So but I want to believe that before this webinar is done, you can think back and say, oh, this is actually an asset that I have, and I can start thinking about planning them well. So what are the estate planning tools, as I talked about? We have a lot, but I will speak on life insurance today. We'll talk about the most popular one, which is the wills. We have the trust, which we're going to talk about, and then power of attorney. So what is a life insurance? A lot of people know life insurance to an extent, but I think in Nigeria, the key thing that most people know is the car insurance, for example. And I think I would say that if you have questions, please feel free to use the chat box. We want to make this as interactive as possible. So feel free to put your questions on the Q&A chat box, or you can chat us directly on the chat box as well. So we will look into your questions towards the end or even during the interactive section. So please feel free, whatever questions you have, please go ahead and write that down. So I was talking about the most popular insurance we have in Nigeria here, I think, is the car insurance. A lot of people know that there's car insurance, but not a lot of people actually have them. But I'm going to talk about life insurance, for example. It's a contract for your life, saying I want to insure my life. Some celebrities insure things that are very important to them. I've heard of a celebrity who insured her legs, and she's a model. She insured her legs. So if anything happens to, maybe she has an accident or anything, she could get the money to maybe go for a surgery and all of that. But we're talking about life as it is. It's a form of estate planning. For that celebrity, as I mentioned, her legs are the most important assets to her, and she thought about having that insured. It's the same way you as an individual can insure your life. And it's a contract between you and the insurance company, for example. And in most cases that we know, it is triggered by, let's say, terminal illness or critical illness, or like I mentioned, an accident. depending on the contract, then there will now be that payout. And some of the benefits are, it's tax advantageous. There's interest on premiums that the premiums that you pay by monthly or annually, depending on what the contract entails. You can have interest on that, and you can have multiple nominees. It means that you can have the nominees are people who can benefit from this insurance, from the insurance claim. And it's important to note the tax advantage. When people hear tax advantage, they think, oh, I'm going to bypass taxes by having this. Not necessarily. You are able to have a rebate on the sums that you pay in according to the personal income tax of laws in Nigeria. So you have the sum, the general premium that you pay in will be taxed, but that monthly sums that you pay in for that purpose will not be taxed. So you can have some sort of tax rebate from this structure. So the will is one of the most well-known tool of estate planning, and I like to call it a letter from the dead. It's you saying what I want to be done. It is handwritten, it is signed, it is sealed, it is delivered, and the benefits are you have that expedited process of will transfer. It means that as soon as you've lodged the will and you're no longer here, your beneficiaries or your children or your wards or your charitable organizations can come in and say, this is what you as the testator or the testatrix has wished for things to be done. And in this, you can appoint a guardian for your children. You have the ability to say, I trust this person, I trust my family, I trust my mom, my mother, for example, or my very good friend to be a guardian for my kids. And then you can also handle the transfer of your assets in an orderly manner. Like I mentioned, it is written. So that means in an orderly manner, you can have bequests, you can have savings, whatever it is. And the idea behind the will is even for properties that you don't even know that you have or do not exist at the time, you can cover for it through a residual clause. And you can also appoint an executor or a trustee. So in the case of having to have all of these documentations down, and you need someone who you trust to actually execute your wishes. And in most cases, people appoint their personal individuals. So for example, personal friends or people they trust. But in most cases, we always like to advise that you have a corporate entity as your executor or your trustee, because integrity issues, because you want to be sure that whatever it is you've written down is carried on as you have stated it should be. So power of attorney is also a very interesting way, as an interesting tool for estate planning. It's a written authorization to be done to represent you, and for an individual, you give authorization to another individual to represent you on private affairs, financial affairs, a lot of affairs that might come up. This is I think most people know this. When you hear of power of attorney, it's usually lawyers. Individuals give this power to their lawyers, or to give it to maybe a firstborn son, a first child in most cases. And people do this most times when they have terminal illnesses, or they feel like they might be deteriorating to the point that they might not have their full capacity to carry on certain duties. So they have this selection done and giving that authority to individuals to act on their behalf. In other cases too, individuals might appoint corporate entities like ours to handle such affairs. And some of the benefits are, it gives you that proactive selection of a decision maker. I mean, at the time, before things starts to get, before you become incapacitated, or if you feel like there's an illness you have, or there's some sort of reasons why you might not be able to carry on your affairs to the fullest ability, you have that advantage, to have someone to make those decisions for you. And what that means is that it prevents delay in asset protection. So if I don't know if you've seen in certain movies, people are running helter-skelter, trying to look for the matriarch or the patriarch of a family to sign documents. If you have a written power of attorney, there's no such delay. And also it clears the questions about the donor's intent. Anyone who has a written authorization, it's clear as day that they have that, they have the intention of the donor to give such powers to carry out those activities. So, and the next is the trust. it's a three-party arrangement between you as a settlor or the trustor and the trustee, like us, like AfriInvest Trustees, for example, and it's to hold assets for your benefit, for the benefit of the beneficiaries. This is a very interesting tool because the flexibility that comes with it, it is very I like to call it building a clone of yourself, and it works in different ways. It works while you're alive, and it continues to run as if you were here. And I think towards the end of this webinar, we're going to dive into more and more of what this trust is about, and you see much more of the benefit as opposed to what is here. But I'll just run through this. So avoid probate or any estate tax, which is one of the key factors of setting up a trust. In Lagos State, for example, you have the 10% that goes as estate tax. If you have a trust, all of your assets pass down directly to your beneficiaries, and you protect your assets. This is one of the finest tools of protecting your assets, and it preserves family culture and legacy. Individuals who have names, the Rockefellers that we know today, the big names that you know today, they've been able to pass down legacy, pass down culture because of this tool. And that's one of the key factors of benefits, rather, of having a trust. And professional asset management, you cannot have this without I would like to say, a corporate entity like AfriInvest Trustees, because even if you have the right to appoint individuals to be your trustee, but what is the guarantee that they'll be willing and able to act? What is the guarantee that they might even precede you, for example? What if they die before you? So it's always in your best interest and the best interest of your beneficiaries to have a corporate entity professionally manage those assets. So I'm going to quickly compare all of these tools as I've spoken about. So for life insurance, power of attorney, wills and trusts. What is the coverage over assets of any class? So we've talked about different assets. So real estate, liquid assets, whatever assets you can think about. Does life insurance cover for all? Does power of attorney cover for all? Does wills cover for all? Does trust cover for all? You can see that life insurance is catered to just life. Power of attorney, yes, because that's a written instruction to handle various kinds of affairs. Wills, yes, you simply write as whatever you want, and the trust as well. So, and for additional funds, the life insurance can give you can have additional funds upon demise, because the idea is at the time of your death, there's a huge payout in some instances. The power of attorney, not necessarily. And the wills, no, there are no additional funds, because it's what the estate has at the time of death that is being distributed. And the same thing goes for the power of attorney. But for the trust, it's a possibility because of trust management, of professional management. The trust estate is managed effectively, and the trust is ensured to be an ongoing concern. So there's a possibility that there will be additional funds upon the demise of the settlor. Then assured independence in executing wishes. Yes, because it's a contractual agreement and the independence is sure. Our power of attorney depends. There could be certain influences from members of family to whoever holds the power of attorney, and there could be certain lack of independence in that regard. And for the wills, is a written, signed, sealed document, so there is no lack of independence in this regard. And the trust, as I mentioned before, has that advantage as well. So what is incontestable among aggrieved relatives and all of these tools? The life insurance is incontestable, the power of attorney as well. Wills is highly contestable, and the trust is incontestable, and we'll get into that. Flexibility among all of these trusts. Life insurance is not flexible. You're just holding it's your life that is being insured. The power of attorney, yes, as I've mentioned, there are different variations of what the wishes could be. And the wills, yes, there's a flexibility because it accommodates any wish at all. And the trust is the same thing. So what about exercise of powers? Life insurance, you have the right to exercise those powers. Power of attorney, it depends on the individual and also depends on whoever's holding that power of attorney. And for the wills as well, it also depends on the exercise of those powers. And the trust, yes, as well, it's easy to exercise those powers as opposed to other tools. So we've spoken a lot about this comparison, and I just wanted to point out that comparing a trust and life insurance is very, very interesting to advise clients to think about. If you're having a life insurance, think about having a trust to benefit from this life insurance. And what that means is it circumvents the issue of getting letters of administration. So it means that once there is a payout, it passes straight into the trust and directly to your beneficiaries. So as far as life insurance goes, a lot may be left to the discretion of, whoever handles it. So you could also put the beneficiaries under pressure. Power of attorney is also, it puts a lot of pressure on whoever holds that power of attorney, especially if it's an individual. And, that you now see influences coming from different members of the family. But a trust cannot be contested because regardless of the difference of opinions of individuals who benefit under the trust is set sealed. And in most cases, the settler who sets up the trust sees how it runs from the beginning. And if there are anything that they don't like, they have the ability to change. And that, covers for a lot of unforeseen contingencies that might occur. And, it gives it that flexibility to cover for any issues that might come in from other parties that should benefit from the trust. So at this point, I'm going to call in my co-host Ebonluwa to take us on the real gem amongst all of this. What is the real gem of estate planning? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chisom, for that insightful piece as to estate planning, the tools of estate planning, and also trying to take us through the comparison of what estate planning is. But basically, before I do that, I'd like to take us to, the table that was shown that speaks to what a trust is, and that speaks to how a trust is different from all of these assets. We are looking at this table, and then we are seeing where some particular tools cannot be used. We're seeing where some particular estate planning tools may not be applicable. So it then speaks to the question, what exactly is that main tool that you can use in estate planning to actually achieve all the needs and all the wants that you want as an individual looking to protect his assets, as an individual looking to achieve a seamless transition. So it takes us to the question, what is the real gem? And I would like us to look at this 4 picks 1 word puzzle. I would like us to look at the diagrams and then explain or try to take a reflective moment to say, what is that estate planning tool that, based on what my colleague Chisom has said, can be used to achieve everything and basically, most things that you want to do to protect your assets. I'll probably give us, 1 minute or 30 seconds for us to provide the answers to this question. You can write the answer in the chat box, which you have there. So what is the answer to, what is the 5 words that we're looking for as an estate planning tool that we can use to protect most and any of our assets? Okay, we're having some answers, correct answers. We're having correct answers. And I'm impressed to see that people are beginning to understand the message that we're trying to pass across here. All right, so without further ado, the answer that we're looking for is the trust. And so it then begs the question, what exactly is a trust? What is this thing that people are always saying, oh, trust. I want to understand. So a trust basically, happens to be a tripartite agreement. That is a tripartite agreement between 3 persons known as the settlor, the trustee, and then the beneficiaries. A settlor in the trust arrangement basically is the person setting up the trust, the person that said, okay, I have these assets. I want to bequeath this asset to a particular set of beneficiaries. I want to ensure that these assets will keep on being applied for the use and the upkeeping and the taking care of my beneficiaries. But what does this settlor give this assets to protect this asset? There's a party also known as the trustee, which here here in this case, we're talking about AfroInvest trustees. So what do you do? What do you give to AfroInvest trustees? Then you advise, they say, I want AfroInvest trustees, to manage my assets. I want AfroInvest trustees to be able to, hold these assets for the sake of particular persons that we refer to as, the third party, which is the beneficiaries. The beneficiaries basically are persons that, are entitled to the assets that which a settlor, has given to the trustees to hold for their own benefits. Taking us to, the benefits of the trust, and the numerous things that, a trust does, and then the trust itself, the components, having to explain all of this. If you see on this slide here, what looking at, a trust can have access to the coverage over any assets of class. So in this case, a trust basically affords you the opportunity to protect and then accumulate any assets that you want. We're talking about fixed assets, floating assets, your shares, your stocks, basically things that you want to safeguard for the welfare of your beneficiaries. There is ease to exercise powers. A trust affords you, the ability to exercise your power, because you as the settlor, the person setting up the trust, just like I mentioned previously, you have the power to dictate, oh, I want this particular asset, this amount of money to be applied. You may say, oh, I want it to go to my beneficiaries when they've attained the age of 18. I want it to go to my beneficiaries when they've attained the age of 20. It's very flexible for you to be able to exercise your powers, because you have the authority to give the trustees instructions as to what you want. There's also assured independence in executing your wishes, in the sense that a trust comes with what we call the Bible of the trust, which is the trust deed, the agreements of the trust that enables you to, state all of these things, and then on a day-to-day basis, dictate, your wishes and how you want your trustees to follow these wishes. So there's assured independence, because it is even an agreement between you and the trustee, so no other person is even involved in the agreement. And we talk about incontestability by agreed relatives. If you look at the will, for example, the will is a public document, in as much as, you may use it to say, oh, you want this to go to Mr. A, you want this to go to B, but a will is highly contestable. And what does this do? It's a trust allows you to, because of the confidential nature of the trust, as opposed to a will, a trust allows you to, protect your assets from third parties or people that would have been intermeddling into your estate or in how you run your affairs on a normal day. And the beauty of a trust is you can name it anything. For example, you can have a trust and you can name it black trust, yellow trust, white trust, and on documentations, because a trust also involves, for the trustee to hold these assets, there has to be obviously passage of legal title. But documentations, nobody would even know who owns these assets, because what you will see there is white trust, what you will see there is black trust. And also, a trust is beautiful because it's that you want, just like I said, it's flexible, you're able to exercise your powers, you're able to dictate things that you want, and then you're able to, say one or two things, even if after your demise, as long as there is enough, funds for all of this to happen. So people talk about trust, but I'm sure we've heard about different types of trust. Some of us have heard about the word living trust, some of us have heard about the word blind trust, and some of us are even new to all of these terms. So because we have a whole lot of trust, I may not be able to go through everything, but I'll do my best to take us through the major types of trust that we have, and then how these trusts are being constituted to achieve the purpose that settlers want the trust to do for them. So looking at the living trust, basically, I like to call this trust the grandnorm and the father of all trust. A living trust, or an inter vivos trust, as some people will call it, is basically, a legal document, just like I said, in which all of your wishes, all the things that you want to do, every kind of asset, be it fixed or floating assets, are being given to the trustees, to hold for the benefit of the beneficiaries. So a living trust can do one and any other kind of wish that you want to be included in your trust structure. Some of us have also heard about the word the blind trust. What is the blind trust? A blind trust is basically a type of living trust, wherein the beneficiaries in this case have no prior information of even the assets of the trust. So in this instance, the clients that tend to gravitate towards this type of trust, you see them as clients that, okay, let's say they have a feeling that maybe their beneficiaries would not be able to maintain those assets, or maybe the beneficiaries are a bit spendthrift and they're like, okay, I want to save, I want to give this person something, but I know if I give the asset to the person now, the person will squander this asset, or the person may not be able to use this asset well. So what do? I create a blind trust. And I told the trustee, as at year 2025, as at year 2030, I want you to disburse these funds to this particular beneficiary. So at this point, the beneficiary doesn't even know that he's entitled to something. And the beauty of the blind trust, and why I like the blind trust, is you mostly see it in cases where, I'm sure some of us have heard about the word trust fund babies. Some people, to create a trust fund baby, because I mean, you want to give a whole lot of assets to somebody that is just 7-year-old and probably does not even have an idea of what money is. But because you know that life is very fragile and anything can happen at any time, you want to protect your asset and then ensure that that young, lad, that young beneficiary enjoys this asset. So what do? You basically can create a blind trust and say, okay, once this child attains the age of 25, 26, 27, I want you to, disburse this amount of funds to this child in this particular proportions. And with that, you've been able to secure the legacy of that child. So to run through the other type of trust, what's an education trust? From the word education, it's basically a type of trust where, you're keeping funds, you're keeping assets for the benefit of certain individuals, certain beneficiaries, and saying, okay, I want these funds to be used to cater for their education. I want these funds to be used to cater for their education up to when they have attained masters, up to when they have attained the PhD. You may even say, even after they've attained all of this degree, you want the remainder of the funds to apply towards them getting any certification of the choice. So basically, it's a trust that is strictly tailored towards the offering of educational support to beneficiaries. What is a charitable trust? A charitable trust, from what we see here, from even the name charitable, means a trust that you create for charity. And in most cases, you see people that are very wealthy, they're trying to look for a way to give back to the society, but they don't have a particular means by which they want to do this, because they probably don't trust the next man. You imagine having to give somebody 300 million naira, 1 billion naira, saying, I want you to use this and then do the good for the community. It's very dicey, because once money reaches the hand of a human being, you never can know what the person would do. So a charitable trust, basically, it's when you create a trust and say, okay, I want these assets in this trust to be applied for a particular charitable purpose, and the trustees are licensed by the Securities and Exchange Commission, so they cannot at some point say they want to divert your funds or use your funds for something else, because they are being regulated by an exchange body in which if there's any infraction, their license can be revoked. Looking at a testamentary trust, or a will trust, as you call it, a testamentary trust basically is the type of trust that it allows you to say in your will, for example, just like I said, if you're having issues and then you do not want maybe your the person that you're appointed to look over your estate or your assets, to interfere in your assets, you could say, okay, in my will, upon my death, I want all of these assets that I have put down to be put into a trust. So you can even create a trust in death, in the sense that a will speaks from the dead. So you've told the executors, I want a trust. I don't want all of these assets to go to any individual, to transfer to anybody. I want a trust to be created upon my demise, and all these assets that I've listed in my will should go into the trust. So in some other areas, some may also call it a pour-over will, some may call it a testamentary trust or a will trust, but it achieves the same purpose, meaning a trust is being created after the demise of a person based on the instruction that a person has said in the will. What's a special needs trust? From the word special needs, we tend to sometimes be emotional towards, persons that are disabled, people that need special care. And it's sad, but it's the truth. We may not be always there to protect these persons, to help these persons. So how can you help that child? It takes me to a very touching story that I know very well of, a very good client of mine, very wealthy. And, he happened to, have a beneficiary who was suffering from cerebral palsy. And, the man had catered for this child up to the age of 25. But unfortunately, the man was of age and he knew that he was going to die soon. So what did he do? He had to create a special needs trust and said, okay, I want all of these monies, I want all of these funds, I want all of these dividends coming from my stocks, I want all of these investments, the returns, the ROIs coming from whatever investment I have to be in this trust to be applied for, the taking care of this child that requires a day-to-day care, because we all know how difficult it can be to be dealing with a child with cerebral palsy. So that's what the special needs trust does. And what is the family trust? A family trust, basically, it's also from the word itself, the family trust, is when you try to create a trust for the purpose of your family. You're trying to say, okay, I want this trust to be centered around my family. I want this trust to ensure that every member of my family will be taken care of. So you appoint a trustee to look after the affairs of the family on a day-to-day basis. Also, the trustees will be actively involved, with managing this assets and what have you. And lastly, we have the Asset Protection Trust. And I love this trust very well because, it reminds me of a very popular artist, a very popular musician who we may all know well, probably all of us, Michael Jackson. Most of us have always wondered, oh, what happened to Michael Jackson's wealth? What happened to his estate? What happened to all the assets that he had? What happened to, his legacy? Most of us do not know, or most of us are not aware before now that Michael Jackson actually had a trust. He was a popular musician that knew that his lifestyle would come with a lot of criticisms. His lifestyle would come with people trying to gain out of his assets. So what did he do? He created a trust in which he was able to put all of these assets and protected it from creditors, from intermediaries, from people saying, oh, I'm your son, I'm your daughter, I'm your wife, I'm your this, I'm your that, I'm your whatever. And we all know the amount of legal cases that Michael Jackson had to go through trying to defray all of these allegations. So he created an asset protection trust in which he protected his assets by giving them to a trustee and then ensuring that all the details and all the assets that he has goes to his beneficiaries whom he has named in his trust. And I know some of you might say, oh, but you said the trust is confidential, so how did I know that Michael Jackson had a trust? Well, Michael Jackson, we only got to know just because of how popular and how famous he was. So it was, the estate had no other choice than to say, okay, I think we really let people to know that there's a trust in place and then no other person can have claim to this asset. So we've looked at the trust, we've looked at the benefits of the trust, the components of the trust. I would like us to take a brief moment to reflect over some of the things I've said, by answering some of the questions, some of the polls that are coming right up now, that will be shown on your screen, and then try to answer it to the best of your ability. This would, give us the understanding and give us the assurance that, you have been able to understand the message that we're trying to pass across as to the trust structure. So I would give us about 1 minute, 30 seconds to basically answer some of these questions. And then we would like to have the feedback so we can understand and then be sure that you have been able to understand the concept of a trust. Okay, we have some right answers coming in. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. So basically, on our first question, we can see, when you hear estate planning, what comes to mind? Just like I said, simple. It does not, estate planning does not really relate to you having to build houses, or because you hear the word estate, are talking about real estate, or, you probably think, oh, it's only rich people that do this. No, it's a way of protecting your assets and transferring your assets. Which of these estate planning tools do you find most effective? Most of us chose the trust. I'm very happy and I'm very glad that we all understand that a trust can do basically all other things that these estate planning tools that we can see on our screen, such as life insurance, can do. And lastly, do you know a trust fund baby? So most of us said yes, and I'm sure we all want to have trust fund babies. So it would be very nice for you to basically have a trust so that you also can have a trust fund baby. And on this instance, I will be giving the mic back to my colleague Chisom Wobo, who will be taking us through our other services that we offer here at AfriInvest Trustees, and taking us through how we can be of help to you and how you can also reach us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Apple. Thank you so much for a very insightful and interactive session. I think everyone can see my screen, so let's talk about the poll. We can see the questions and how we fared in that regard. A lot of what has been discussed already falls part of our services. We've talked about testamentary trusts, the wills, different kinds of trusts. Those fall under our services. And you'll see that is the purview of most of the things that we do. So will services, living trusts, education trust, power of attorney, medical and financial, we offer them, letters of administration, procurement of these letters of administration. I mean, if you're aware of how long it takes to procure this, even getting a grant of probate is always advisable to have companies like AfriInvest Trustees to assist you with doing that. Corporate executorship, the webinar poll is pulling up again. So we can see that estate planning, when you hear estate planning, we have 4, that's 8%. 4% think that is only for the ultra rich, and most people don't need it. 88% think that is a way of protecting and transferring assets. That's a very good number. So 8% also think that life insurance is the most effective, but we have 76% saying that is the trust. So which is good, as Ebu has said. So do you know a trust fund baby? No, 76%. That's a good answer as well, because it means that after this webinar, we're going to be having more trust babies that will come off from this. So thank you very much for participating. So going on to our services, corporate executorship service, we offer that as well. We also play in the corporate space as well. So public trust, corporate bonds, employee incentive plans. We had a webinar on this the last time. Security trustee services like the ventures, mortgage arrangements, escrow agencies. The real estate sector is booming, and we play a huge role in that regard as well. So fund trusteeship, we assist individuals, and as well as share trusteeship. So these are assets-based in different on individual basis and a corporate basis. We assist our clients and play a significant trust role in all of this. So we would love to hear from you. There's a lot of information that we've given out, and we've seen the questions that have come up as well. So while we try to answer as much as possible, we also want to advise people to speak to trust advisors personally, because there's a lot of conversations that you might not want to share on a public platform like this. It is always advisable to speak to trust professionals on whatever issues that you might have, or even if it's just to start building. We're very able and willing to assist each and everyone. So I want to say thank you again for participating, and would head straight to questions and answers immediately. So I think the first question I would like to handle is concerning life insurance benefits. There were 3 benefits listed. You spoke only on tax rebates. Could you speak on the other 2 benefits listed? So I did mention that the life insurance, you could have different nominees, which are people who benefit under that life insurance. So you have a plethora of number of people that you might include to benefit from that. And I also talked about the interest. So the sums that go in monthly or annually or however which way the contract goes is not sitting fallow, it is invested. So that answers that. So Ebu, I don't know if you have one you want to hand.
Absolutely, absolutely. There are actually a lot of brilliant questions that I see here. Someone asked, what taxes are applicable in a trust? And I love that question because, we talked about how a trust can be used to, sort of mitigate tax to a very large extent. Most of us are wary of giving monies to the government, and then we're not seeing anything being done in the economy. And I can assure you that whilst there may not be a lot of taxes applicable in the trust structure, or whilst there may not be, all those capital tax and then, paying tax or VAT on your assets, the only tax that can be applicable in a trust structure is the personal income tax. And that is when at the point of disbursing funds or at the point of when you are getting to get this asset in your personal capacity, you may have to at some point in every time, submit to the tax authorities what we call your personal income tax. So the trust asset itself is not taxable. It cannot be taxed because it's a confidential agreement. Most of the time, even the government has no idea, or any governmental institution or body has no idea that you have this arrangement. It's covered by the Trustees Act and the Trustees Investment Act. However, just like I said, at some point in time, you may want to pay your personal income tax. So funds that may have been disbursed to you on a personal basis, you may want to, remit your personal income tax, which is due to you to the tax authorities. You may take the next question, Jason.
Okay, so I think I'll take this question as a roundup of a lot of questions that I've been seeing. There's, when we talk about trusting a trust, I think a lot of people are looking at it in terms of, how am I even trusting you, the trustee? Do you see? And there's a lot of questions around that. So I have one saying, there are stories that trustees are spending and depleting the estate entrusted to their care, leaving the beneficiaries, and something around, what if the trust folds up? I think I will mention that we're highly regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission. It's a highly regulated industry. And in instances where this person must have heard that stories of trustees, I can assure you that in most cases, these trustees are individuals. It's important that you appoint corporate entities like ours. Apart from being regulated, our trust assets are not kept in the purview of the trust company. Right? Trust assets are held separately. Like I said earlier, you're creating a clone of yourself. It's a legal entity. Do you see? So that means that legal entity can live and breathe as a corporate entity on its own. So that's one of the assurances that having a trust company like ours gives. So depleting the estate of it's really unheard of in the trust space. I can tell you that. So Ebon, do you want to take another one?
Absolutely. So I saw a very brilliant question here, and it says, how would the assets be transferred to the trustees? Beautiful question. So if I could take it back to when I was speaking, I said for the trustees, and then also what my colleague Chisom just said, for the trustees to hold these assets, they have to be transferred to them legally. So what that means is that, title, whatever relation you have to that asset would leave your personal capacity and then be given to the trustees who have the legal capacity to then hold this asset. So let's say, for example, you want to give a piece of land to a trust. What then do you do? How do you effect, the transfer of this piece of land to the trustee? What you have to do is you would have to perfect your title, just like when you purchase a piece of land and then you don't perfect it to your name. You also have to perfect the title of that piece of land in the name of the trustee, so that on that particular deed or on that particular whatever title that the land may have, whenever you go to the land registry or you go to do a search as to the property, it is the name of the trust that that will be on that document. So in that way, you've already transferred your assets legally to the trust. So nobody knows again that it's Mr. Lagbaja that is the owner of this piece of land at Omole Estate or at VI or at Ikoyi. What they will be seeing basically is just the name of the trust and probably a company. So you cannot later come to AfriInvest and say, oh, I want to know who is behind this trust. It is impossible because, just like I said, a trust is strictly confidential and is an arrangement solely between you creating the trust with the trustees and then the beneficiaries that you are putting these assets down for. Chisom, thank you.
Okay, I want to say thank you again to everyone who is participating. There's a lot of interesting questions. I want to treat who manages the trust. Must it be invested only in AfriInvest? And also, is it expensive? So the idea behind the trust is not to just for AfriInvest trustees to just sit on the entirety of your assets, which it is recommended. However, but we know that there are individuals that have assets in different financial institutions and the like. So the idea is for you to consolidate that in one space. So you have a purview of all of your assets under one umbrella. And in terms of expenses differ on an individual to individual basis. Like I said in the beginning, this webinar is to sensitize individuals to know that this is not just a tool that the ultra high net worth individuals could use. You as anyone like me starting up can start from scratch, so to speak. So depending on what you want to do, we have different products that could cater to your needs. So please feel free to reach out to us after the webinar as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chisom. So I would like to just quickly take, a very brilliant question also that I just came across, and it says, how can a trustee obviate default of life insurance claims at maturity? I love this question because it's sort of the person who asked this question clearly understands how you can infuse, the life insurance tool as an estate planning tool with a trust. And, so I would like to educate us and let us know that on your life insurance policy, rather than saying, okay, if you are, skeptical about the payouts being certain, if you are skeptical about whether the coverage of the life insurance will be paid to your beneficiaries, what you could do is, you could appoint the trustee or the trust that you've created for certain beneficiaries to also be the beneficiary of your life insurance. So what does that do? In the event of the inevitable happening, the insurance claim that you are entitled to would go down to your trust, which then trickle down to your beneficiaries. I may want to ask, so how would the trustee, be sure or, be aware of the fact that I'm entitled to an insurance claim? So immediately you have set up a trust to be the beneficiary of your life insurance, and then if you form the trustee of this intention, what that does is that the trustee at every point in time, because there will be periodic communication between you and the trustee, knowing about your affairs, the trustee would definitely know at every point in time that something has happened and then this person probably is no more. And there's a document already that shows all the assets that you have under a trust. So basically the trustee would then move to these life insurance companies and then inquire and ask if already the coverage payments have not been made, and ask, where are these monies? How are these monies being disbursed? This is what this person has indicated. And I can assure you that a trustee being a legal and corporate entity and also being duly regulated will ensure that all of these life insurance claims would be applied to your beneficiaries, which you've also named in your trust. Thank you, Jason.
Okay, so we have interesting questions. We just want to mention that if we can't answer all of them now, we'll reach out to individuals and answer all the questions, and particularly a question talking about assets, real estate assets in Nigeria to be placed in the trust for his kids in the UK. So we'll be speaking on that. We're sending, how that can be done. That can be done definitely by some of our tools that we mentioned, but we'll be responding to the individual privately on that. So there's a lot of questions on the minimum requirements. We have a private investment trust that you can start from as low as 50,000 to 100,000. So we have a lot of products open for a lot of people. So you can always speak to us, and we have our email, trustees@afriinvest.com, that you can send us emails and we will be sure to respond as soon as possible. So I don't know if we have more time to take a few more questions and then we round up.
Okay, I think we should just probably take one. Chisom, what do you think? One last question.
All right, let's do that.
Question. All right. So, well, a question says, can I incorporate a company that would manage my private trust? Well, that's quite a very funny question. Well, I would not say you should not incorporate a company, but there are certain requirements necessary for you to fulfill with Securities and Exchange Commission before you can even be given the license to operate a trust. So you cannot basically go and incorporate a company and say you want to offer trusteeship services. I can even tell you for free, well, you may want to pay me my legal advice services later, but I can tell you for free that you will need a starting capital of 300 million naira before you can even set up a trust company. So except you have that in the bank ready to disburse, you can head over to Securities and Exchange Commission.
Yes, however, if you have a company, it's an asset as well. So you can put that into a trust, and we can speak to you privately on how that will run. So I have a couple of people that said they've joined late. We're going to be sharing the slides to all the participants that have registered. So at this point, further questions that we can treat immediately. I want to say thank you so much to all the participants for joining us and staying till this point. Numbers on the screen, and also, like I said, the email trustees@afriinvest.com. Please feel free to send us an email with your number. We like to be very personal with our clients, so we like to call you and speak to you in depth on your needs. And trust me, no size fits all, but there is definitely a trust product for everybody. So at this point, I would say thank you for joining.
Thank you, everyone. And please have a wonderful afternoon.
And we look forward to you joining us in the next webinar. Thank you.